Today, my talk is called Disappointments and Science of Mind. But first, a joke. A son says to his dad, "Dad, you haven't heard a word I said." And the dad thinks, that's a funny way to start a conversation. But okay, disappointments and science of mind. One of the I've had in my life many big disappointments. And as many of you know, I've been divorced 3 times. Um, I was worked very hard to become a rock and roll star and achieved some of that, but in the end, it was a very disappointing experience. And much of that happened before I ever found out about Science of Mind. Even once I did find out about Science of Mind, one of those marriages happened and then divorced. And the thing about that is at the time, I was in a place of in classes, and I was the music director at the Center for Spiritual Living in Asheville, and I was doing everything I could to keep to these teachings. And maybe you've experienced this, depending on how far along you've come in these teachings, that once you start focusing on the teachings, and our basic teaching is what you focus on, you give power to, that by shifting our perception, we shift the quality of our life, that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings who create what it is we experience. And when we start thinking about these teachings in a way of first beginning to know them, to you try to use them, to be with them, what can happen a lot of time is we get caught in this place of what is known as spiritual bypass. And that can be, and a lot of people talk about this place, but I know that when I am there, when that happens to me personally, it can sometimes be very confusing. Because on one hand, we want to feel what it is we're feeling. On the other hand, we have a teaching that says, get away from that and focus on what you want to create. One of my early teachers, John Waterhouse, used to do a talk regularly where he would get up, be on stage and show how you just turn your back. You actually look away from the problem and just look towards the result. And when we first start out thinking about this, it can feel very much like we're somehow cutting off our feelings. And in fact, that is what can happen if we don't look at it from a deeper place. If we don't allow ourselves to go deeper with the experience. One of the ways in which I personally took on this teaching in a way that allowed me to get beyond what is called spiritual bypass is to consistently check in with myself about what I'm really feeling, along with looking at what it is I want to give power to. And so the last time I was divorced, I was in these teachings to a place where I was beginning to play with these principles. And in retrospect, I can look back and see the places in which I was definitely in spiritual bypass, the places in which I couldn't get in touch with these teachings at all and was in complete freak out. Because if you've ever been divorced, you know it's a huge deal in your life. It's not a small thing. And there's a lot of feelings of failure around it, no matter how much, you try your best not to feel at fault around it. And to not allow those feelings to process is the heart of spiritual bypass. And yet, in the midst of this, we need to reach a place of where we know the truth. Now, this can sound very confusing and certainly did to me and maybe does to you. How do you process all that? The answer is ongoing. The answer is, how close to being in the moment can you continually be with your emotion and with the truth? The answer is that our teaching is built into a paradox of the human feelings that we experience until the true shift of perception happens, when all of a sudden you actually look at yourself and go, wow, I'm really not that upset. I really am in a place where I'm feeling okay. And that's the beauty of digging into these teachings and keep going with the process of what's possible here in terms of you being, me being, each of us being the focus of our experience. Because we really do create our lives, but we need to do it from a place where we're not blaming ourselves for what happened before. We're not at fault. We're simply at responsibility, which can only happen in this moment now. The interesting part about how all this stuff works is you can't actually be responsible for what already happened, because that is a misnomer of the definition of the word. Being responsible is to be responsive. And the only place any of us at any moment can be responsive is in this moment now. And so when we start thinking about what happened, we are not being here now with what is happening. And I have found that the deeper I dig into now, the more clear I am with what is really going on with me, and the easier it actually gets to shift into the truth of who I am and what is possible. Now, I'm not perfect at this. And so I can also be pulled back in by myself. When I say pulled back in, not like something out there is pulling me back in. It's not like something out there will pull you back in to what happened. We do it. We have that mechanism inside us that pulls us back into whatever trauma, big or small, has occurred in our life. That's the heart of PTSD, is when we bring that past trauma into our present moment. I mean, we have that mechanism inside us, but the more we can stay present in the now, the more the possibility for healing all that is, and the better it can be in terms of being with these teaching of science of mind in not a spiritual bypass way, but in a way that actually feels healing, loving, and has a forward motion to it. So, the beginning of this week, Ash and I received an email from the Portuguese embassy saying they have denied our visa. And that if we want to apply again, we really need to start the entire process over. And initially, that felt very disappointing. Initially, that felt like, oh my God, we've been doing this process for months. We gave them everything they asked for. How could they, after all the money we spent, the time, the logistics we went through, and everything? We've given notice in our apartment. After all this happening, we've been refused. Now what? The thing about it is the first thing I did after finding this out and talking with Ash about it was I went and took a shower because, and I did that because I wanted to wash off the old way of being that had me have a thought that said, oh my God, you failed again. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, I know better than this. And I have learned very clearly that one of the best things for me to do when I am stuck in a place that is not healthy for me is to move. So I got up, I went, and I took a shower. And while I'm in the shower, I'm thinking to myself, this actually does have to be for our best. Even though I can't see it right now, it actually does. That there must be some really good thing going on here that I can't see, don't understand, and don't have to, because I so believe in our teachings. And in that moment, I realized that I so believed in our teachings, that they had become so a part of how I behave, be how, part of embodiment. We're always talking about embodiment. And I had never in my life felt these principles as embodied as in that moment while I'm in the shower, thinking to myself, actually, this really does have to be a good thing, even though I can't see it. And I literally washed away any sense of disappointment. I literally washed away any sense that so this was somehow against me or bad, and really got into the idea that somehow this is a good idea, that this has worked out this way, and that this means something new is going to show itself. And so by the time I got out of the shower, I was excited. Ran into the living room and talked to Ash about what I was thinking about and what was possible. And then she was like, yeah, that's right. This is actually opens up a world of what else might be possible. And that's the heart of these teachings. When you feel that kind of excitement, you are not spiritually bypassing. You're spiritually bypassing when you're actually feeling still the about, oh, this is so bad, but saying stuff like trying to talk your way out of it instead of being with it and seeing that it's the playing with of both. But I've been doing that so long, and I offer you and want to inspire you to the fact that if you keep at it, if you keep at these teachings, they really do start sinking in on levels that are really quite extraordinary, to where all of a sudden you're looking at a situation that many other times you would have been totally devastated by, and instead actually feel the excitement of what's possible. Man, I was thinking back about, and because this has happened with this, and because Ash and I are now tossing around some incredible possibilities for what's next, and have a lot of excitement around that. And we are clear that we're going to reapply. We're just going to take a breath and not do it right away. We have this dream of living in Portugal, and we're going to do it. We're clear. That's the other thing. It's like just because this happened doesn't take away any of the clarity that Ash and I have that we're winding up in Portugal at the perfect and right time. Because that is part of this teaching too, is that everything happens at the perfect and right time, even if we think it's not. And so, one of the things I've learned through these teachings is if I'm thinking it's not the perfect and right time, then it's my thinking that's the problem, not the circumstance. My perception that's the problem, not the circumstance. And so I was thinking back on when I didn't make it in the music business to the level I had expected to. And when I decided to not pursue that anymore. And that was before I ever heard of Science of Mind. And at that time, my answer to the disappointment, because what it specifically had happened was I had had the last time I went after uh, making it in the music industry, I had gotten a record contract with Warner Brothers. I had a management contract with Paul Simon's management company, and they had set us up a 52-week tour throughout the country before we went into the studio. All my musicians, including myself, quit our day jobs because we were 7 days from hitting the road for our first gig. When I got a phone call from the management company saying Paul Simon's record had hit #1, it was Graceland, had hit #1 at the time, and that they had decided that because Paul had decided to go on tour for his record, he had asked the management company not to pursue any other talent at that time. So the management company was putting everything on hold, which put the Warner Brothers contract on hold, which put our tour on hold. And we had already all quit our day jobs. And so my band was so upset about what had happened, they all quit. And so within a 48-hour period, I went from having everything I had dreamed of having to it all being gone. And at the time, did not have the tools to handle that kind of disappointment and wound up drinking heavily for almost 4 straight months without being sober. And I look back on that time, and given how my life flourished from that, after, not obviously not then, but once I stopped drinking and my life started to develop and things started happening and all that has happened since then, which has just been extraordinary. I look back on what my life would have been if I'd made it in the music business, which would have, sometimes I think because I was so into drugs and drinking and all that stuff, I may not have even survived the music industry into this beautiful, incredible life I have now. If I had had the tools then, I can, the difference, I would have been able to know what is so clear to me now, which is that with this disappointment, something beautiful is coming. It has to be, because that's how my life works. That's how your life works. Something beautiful is coming. We are all powerful, creative, spiritual beings. When we spend time delving in the past, we are using our power against us. When instead we focus on the here and now and the possibilities that come out of that, we are using our power for us. And when I think about that, it excites me. It excites me how much I've learned through Science of Mind. It excites me to be with this amazing woman who's in ministerial school, who is also embodying these same principles. It excites me what's possible for the moving forward in my life. The more we can embody these principles, the more they take over, like any habit. We get to have the use of these principles as the default habit we turn to. Now, just so we're clear, I've been at this now almost 25 years. So, getting to this point of habit did not happen to me overnight. It wasn't something that after the first couple of years I was like, oh, yeah, I got this down. In fact, that's why I speak to those of you who have been in this for maybe 5 years. Because at that point, some of this can get incredibly confusing in terms of dealing with your feelings and bringing in the principles. But I want you to know that it's absolutely possible that you too can one day, and maybe you're already there, to a point where when something that may seem disappointing happens, you can, as quickly as I did, turn it around and feel like, wow, this is actually exciting. There's something new to be nurtured here. There's something new that must be coming, and I'm excited to see what it is. And I'm not kidding myself. And Ash wasn't kidding herself. We weren't playing around trying to get us to feel that way. We really were there. And that is extraordinary. And that's what's possible when you really dig into the practice. I have spoken to people who have said, I've been doing science, I've been studying the science of mind for 25 years, and my life still stinks. And what I tell every one of them every single time is it doesn't take studying, it takes practice. You can study all you want, but it's in that moment when things are not going the way you want that if you can put your practice forth then, again and again and again and again, you will build a spiritual muscle that is not spiritual bypass. It is actually who you are. I have learned to trust in the science of mind principles and embody them to a place in which they show up. I have learned that that doesn't mean that that makes everything work hunky-dory all the time. What it means is I have a higher quality of life no matter what the circumstance. And that the ultimate outcome is always for my good. That's what's possible here. That's what we can all reach for. That's what we can all have. If you have a disappointment in your life, great. What a great time to practice. What a great time to practice. And that doesn't mean disregarding your feelings. It means digging into the point where you can actually shift how you see it so that your feelings go along with you, so that you can feel the change in your feelings. That was the best part about this experience for me, was feeling the change in my feelings. Because I went from being disappointed, feeling like a failure, to being excited, all within a scope of less than 20 minutes. It was extraordinary. It was fun. I mean, I look back on the whole thing that we went through this week, and this week has been fun. It's been fun to generate whatever comes next. That's the heart of life. That's what's possible is fun. And that's what I wish for each and know for each and every one of you. I love you. Thank you. That's my talk for